We're going to begin with a passage from a letter that Maimonides, who we've been quoting a lot in this course, wrote to the Jews in Yemen during his day, okay, which I think the 12th century. The Jews in Yemen were confronted with a lot of turmoil during that time. The first was there was a fanatical Muslim cleric who became the ruler of the land, and he decreed that all Jewish subjects have to convert to Islam. That was a major problem for the Jews in Yemen at that time. A lot of them converted outwardly, remained Jews inwardly. And we've had this in history at different times. In addition, there was a Jewish apostate who embraced Islam at the time as well. And he was preaching to the Jewish communities that Muhammad was, the divine prophet. Okay? And that became a very big pressure again on the Jews and probably on the younger Jews. And then on top of all of that, some imposter showed up and announced that he's the Mashiach, which happened many times throughout our history, right? And so they were suffering spiritually and being very heavily challenged and weakened. So Maimonides, and they actually wrote to Maimonides, and Maimonides wrote back some counsel. And one of the things that he discusses in this letter is anti-Semitism, the claims of Christianity and Islam, and the idea of this false Messiah. Okay? And we're going to take just a few lines from this letter, which is relevant to our discussion, in where Maimonides discusses the claims of Christianity and Islam versus the claim of Judaism in regards to the Word of God. Okay? Let's read text number 1. We're going to go to Candy. Can we start with you? Maimonides makes a very bold statement. He makes a very bold statement. Let me ask you this question. Does anyone know what Maimonides' occupation was? He was a physician. Okay, what? He was a philosopher. Excellent. And he was, of course, a rabbi, right? A scholar, the leading scholar of his generation. How many of you think that Maimonides' IQ was much higher than the average person? If you had to guess. Right? Probably, right? We can assume so. He was a physician, right? He was a tremendous philosopher. He also wrote, I study his works every single day. It's part of my daily study ritual. I study Maimonides' works. He had a vast knowledge of Judaism. I just try to understand his basic writings. That's all I'm trying to do, right? So, and he was a philosopher and he was a rationalist. This is very important to understand. He was a rationalist. That means there are different rabbis. Some rabbis take mystical approaches and some take rational approaches. Because he wanted to combat the philosophers of the day, which some Jews were being attracted to, he specifically focused on Judaism being explained in a rational way, not in a mystical way, to demonstrate that Judaism has deep philosophy and you don't need to go elsewhere. Okay? Now, this same Maimonides makes this statement that the fact that this unique historical event at Sinai is attested to by the best of evidence, And he's a scientist. He's a man of medicine and a philosopher. And he says, never before or since has a whole nation witnessed a revelation from God or beheld his splendor. Okay, that's a major statement. Why did he say this? Did he say this out of belief? Or did he say this because he was able to verify factually that this was true? Maimonides, being a rationalist, would make such a statement not out of belief, because it's just like a bold, like people of faith can get up and say all of these major statements, right? But if you can't back that statement, it's just a statement of faith. It's a statement of belief. It doesn't really help the person who doesn't believe, right? Maimonides is making a statement here, which we're going to see is actually a factual statement. A factual statement. And that's a very bold statement to make. So we need to understand how all of this works. Here's the reality. The reality is I am 99.9% confident that every one of us had great-great-great-grandparents who firmly held the Sinai event to be true. Okay? There's no question, if we all go back about 3 or 4 generations, about just over 200 years ago, all of us had ancestors that believed that God gave the Torah to the Jewish people at Sinai, that God revealed himself at Sinai. Now, I have a brain, I think, I don't know how to measure my intelligence. I'm intelligent. We're all intelligent, right? Because we can all think. We're human beings, right? I'm sure that my grandparents, my great-grandparents, my grandparents who I know, my great-grandparents who I knew, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, some of them were scholarly, were very intelligent, thinking people. I don't think they would ask any fewer questions than I would ask. And so I think, why did they believe that God revealed himself at Sinai? Based on what did they come up with this?